They destroyed 20 years of my life in 20 minutes. That's how this all started. My name is Harold, I'm 72 years old, and my backyard garden was my world. After my wife passed, it became my therapy. Rows of roses in every color, a small fountain where birds came to drink, and a bench where I spent my evenings reading. It wasn't just a garden, it was my sanctuary. But the HOA didn't care. One morning, I woke up to the sound of engines outside my house. At first, I thought it was a lawn crew. But when I looked out the window, my heart stopped. 3 men were in my backyard, ripping my rose bushes out by the roots. The fountain was already in pieces. I ran outside, yelling so loud my neighbors came out to watch. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. One of the men just shrugged and pointed to a clipboard. "HOA work order, sir. Violation of Community Landscaping Code." My blood boiled. Violation? That's my property. He just kept working. I tried calling the HOA office, no answer. Called again, straight to voicemail. I stood there, powerless, as they hauled away 2 decades of memories. By the time they were done, my backyard looked like a crime scene. Bare dirt, broken branches, and a toppled bench. That night, I sat on the porch, staring at the empty yard until the sun went down. And something inside me snapped. I wasn't just going to replace the garden. I was going to make the HOA regret ever touching it. If this happened to you, if someone destroyed something you built with your own hands, would you fight back? Comment yes if you'd make them pay. The next morning, I started gathering everything I could. Photos of my garden from over the years. Receipts for every plant, every stone, every piece of wood. I wrote down the date and time the crew came, and even got statements from 2 neighbors who saw it all happen. By evening, I had a folder thick enough to bury the HOA in paperwork. But when I marched to the HOA office the next morning, they just laughed. The president, a smug woman named Linda, leaned back in her chair and said, "Mr. Harold, your garden was a violation. Be glad we didn't fine you." That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to be easy. If they wanted a fight, they just got one. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, staring at the folder full of evidence. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's smug smile, the way she leaned back in her chair, acting like she owned me, like she owned my home. But not this time. By 7 a.m., I was back on my feet. I printed extra copies of my photos and receipts and headed straight to City Hall. If the HOA wouldn't listen, maybe the city would. But as I walked in, the clerk barely glanced at my paperwork. "Sir, this is a private HOA matter. You'll have to take it up with their board." I clenched my fists. So they can just do whatever they want? Destroy private property? She lowered her voice. Technically no. But if they claim it was a code violation, it gets tricky. You'd need a lawyer. A lawyer? Just what I didn't want. I went home fuming. I wasn't ready to spend thousands on attorneys, not yet. When I got back to my house, I found a bright yellow envelope taped to my door. Notice of violation. My stomach dropped. According to the letter, I was being fined $250 for unauthorized landscaping debris. Landscaping debris? They were the ones who tore up my yard. I stormed inside and called the number on the letter. After 10 minutes on hold, a calm, robotic voice said, "Mr. Harold, the fine stands. You may appeal at the next board meeting in 4 weeks." For weeks. They wanted me to wait an entire month while they kept hitting me with fines? That's when the idea hit me. If I couldn't beat them alone, maybe I didn't have to. That night, I started knocking on doors. My first stop was Sarah's house, 3 doors down. She's been here almost as long as I have. "Did you hear what happened to my garden?" I asked. Her face fell. "Oh, Harold, I saw the trucks. I thought you agreed to it." Agreed? I almost laughed. They broke into my yard and tore it out without even asking me. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "They did the same thing to me last year. My birdbath was unapproved. They smashed it. I didn't fight it because, well, you know how they are." That last part hit me hard. I knew exactly how they were. By the time I got back home, I'd spoken to 5 neighbors. and 4 of them had their own horror stories. A pergola taken down. A shed repainted without permission. One guy even had his mailbox replaced because it clashed with community standards. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern. The next day, I printed 20 flyers and slipped them under every door on the street. Community meeting, HOA abuse must stop. Saturday night, my garage was packed. 20 people crammed into folding chairs, whispering like we were plotting a revolution, which, in a way, we were. I stood in front of them, holding my folder like it was a weapon. "Look at what they did to me," I said, laying out the photos. "Look at what they've done to all of us. This stops now." Murmurs turned into anger. People started sharing their own stories, louder and louder. They fined me $500 for a wreath. They threatened to tow my car. They said my shutters were the wrong shade of white. By the end of the night, we weren't just angry, we were united. I promised them I'd take the first step. Monday morning, I marched back into the HOA office. Linda barely looked up. "Back again, Mr. Harold?" I slammed the folder on her desk so hard her coffee cup rattled. "You think I'm scared of you? You think I'm going to roll over while you destroy my home? I've got proof. And I've got neighbors who are done being bullied." For the first time, she didn't smile. "You should be careful, Mr. Harold," she said quietly. "You wouldn't want to make things worse for yourself." I stepped closer. "Try me." That night, I got another letter. This one wasn't a fine. It was a threat. Failure to comply with HOA rules may result in legal action, including a lien on your property. They were coming for my house. I sat on the porch, staring at the letter as the sun set. My chest tightened, my hands shook, but I wasn't scared. Not anymore. If they wanted a war, they just made it personal. And this time, I wasn't fighting alone. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. When I picked it up, it wasn't a spam call. It was my neighbor Sarah. "They left me a fine too," she said, voice shaking, "for excessive lawn ornamentation. Harold, I only have one bird feeder left." I gritted my teeth. It had begun. The HOA was striking back. I told her not to pay a dime and hung up. Then I grabbed my folder, my camera, and my old portable printer. It was time to go on offense. For the next 2 days, I became a one-man news crew. I took photos of every violation letter my neighbors had received. I filmed interviews with them on my phone. I made a spreadsheet of every fine, every threat, every ridiculous rule. Then I printed it all out and stapled it together. The HOA blacklist. When I showed it to the neighbors at our second garage meeting, there was a moment of silence. "Yes. They fined you for your curtains? They made you take down a swing set? They towed your car for parking 2 feet off the curb?" People were shouting now, angry, frustrated, finally realizing they weren't alone. I waited for them to quiet down, then said the words that changed everything. "If they can take my garden, they can take anything you love. But what if we all stand up at once? What can they do? Fine all of us? Tow all our cars? Replace every mailbox?" For the first time, I saw hope in their eyes. We started small. First, everyone stopped paying the fines. Then we put up matching signs in our windows. "Stop HOA abuse." Linda must have driven past them on her way to work because the very next morning, I got a letter in my mailbox. "Signs must be removed within 24 hours or penalties will apply." I laughed. Instead of taking mine down, I printed 10 more and passed them out to neighbors. By sundown, nearly every house on the block had one. The next day, the HOA officers came in person. 2 of them stood on my porch, holding clipboards. "Mr. Harold, this is your last warning. These signs are unauthorized. If you don't take them down, we'll start issuing fines of $50 per day." I folded my arms. "Go ahead. And while you're at it, make sure you fine everyone else on this street." They exchanged nervous glances. One of them scribbled something down and left. We weren't just fighting back, we were winning. But we weren't done yet. I sent all my evidence, every photo, every interview, every threat, to the local news station. 2 days later, a reporter called. "Mr. Harold, your story is incredible. We'd love to do a piece on this." That weekend, a news van rolled into the neighborhood. Neighbors lined the street, waving and cheering as the cameras rolled. I stood in front of my bare backyard, holding up the photos of my destroyed garden. They thought they could silence me, I told the camera, my voice shaking with emotion. But all they did was wake us up. By Monday morning, our story was all over Facebook. Hundreds of comments poured in. HOA needs to be sued. Stand your ground, Harold. This is exactly why I'll never buy in an HOA neighborhood. Linda must have seen it, because that evening I got another letter, this time personally signed by her. It wasn't a threat. It was an emergency notice. Mandatory community meeting, HOA board response. When Saturday came, the community center was packed. Every seat was full, people standing along the walls, cameras recording on phones. Linda walked to the podium, looking pale but still trying to keep her composure. "Good evening," she began. "We'd like to address some recent misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? I stood up. "You destroyed my garden, fined my neighbors, threatened liens on our homes, and now you want to call that a misunderstanding?" The crowd roared in agreement. "This board is supposed to protect our neighborhood," I continued, voice rising. "Not terrorize it." Cheers echoed through the hall. Linda's face turned red. "Mr. Harold, please sit down or you'll be removed." "Go ahead," I said, stepping closer to the podium. "Let's see how it looks on camera when you throw out a 72-year-old veteran for speaking the truth." The room erupted. People chanted, "Let him speak! Let him speak!" Linda froze. For the first time since this all started, I saw fear in her eyes. That night as I walked home, neighbors clapped me on the back and thanked me. But I knew we weren't done yet. This wasn't over until they made it right. And next week, when the board voted, I was going to make sure they had no choice. The morning of the vote, I woke up before sunrise. I walked out to my backyard, still bare where my garden used to be, and stood there quietly for a while. I could almost see it in my mind, the rows of tomatoes, the bright marigolds, the hummingbirds darting around. They thought they could erase it with a few shovels and a clipboard. Not today. I put on my cleanest shirt, grabbed my binder full of evidence, and headed to the community center. The parking lot was packed, more cars than I'd ever seen there before. Inside, every chair was full again. People were standing shoulder to shoulder along the walls. Some had brought their kids. Some wore t-shirts that said, "Bring back Harold's garden." I could feel the tension before I even sat down. When Linda and the rest of the HOA board walked in, a low murmur rippled through the room. She tried to keep her head high, but even she looked rattled. The meeting began with the usual formality, but no one cared. Everyone was waiting for the vote. Finally, Linda cleared her throat and spoke. "Before we begin," she said, her voice tight, "the board has prepared a statement." She read it out loud, but it was the same empty language as before, about compliance, uniformity, and community standards. When she was done, I stood up. "Are you finished?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yes. But, because we're not." I walked to the front and turned to face the room, holding up my binder. "These are the fines, threats, and letters you sent to me and my neighbors. These are the photos of my garden before you destroyed it. These are the videos of your officers trespassing on my property." I set the binder down on the podium with a loud smack. "This is what HOA abuse looks like." People cheered. Linda opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't let her. "You fined Sarah for a bird feeder. You made Tom take down a flag he flew for his son who's deployed overseas. You threatened to put a lien on a widow's house because she painted her door the wrong shade of blue." Now the room was roaring. "You don't protect this neighborhood," I said, pointing at the board. "You bully it." The chant started up again. "Vote them out. Vote them out." Linda slammed her gavel. "Order. We will have order." But no one listened. When the vote finally came, it wasn't even close. 3 of the 5 board members resigned on the spot. Linda refused to step down, until a neighbor stood up with a printed copy of the news article that had gone viral. It showed her name, her quotes, and hundreds of comments calling for her removal. She turned pale. "This meeting is adjourned," she said softly, then walked out without another word. We never saw her at another meeting again. 2 weeks later, we held a special election. For the first time, we had real candidates, neighbors who actually cared about the community. I didn't run for the board, but I helped organize it. And on the very first vote under the new leadership, the board passed a resolution. Effective immediately, Harold's garden will be restored at HOA expense. I thought my knees might give out when they said it. A month later, I stood in my backyard, tears stinging my eyes as I watched a truck deliver fresh soil, new plants, and tools. My neighbors came to help. Sarah planted the first flower, Tom built a new trellis, kids ran around handing out watering cans. By the end of the day, my garden was back, more beautiful than ever. As the sun set behind it, I turned to the crowd that had gathered. "This isn't just my garden," I said, voice breaking. "It's ours." People cheered. Someone brought out a radio. Someone else brought lemonade. We turned it into a block party right there on my lawn. And for the first time in years, I felt proud of this neighborhood again. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, I sat on my porch, looking at the restored garden under the moonlight. The HOA thought they could break me, but all they did was make me stronger. And now, thanks to them, this neighborhood finally belonged to the people who lived in it, not the people who tried to control it. I smiled to myself. They tried to steal my peace. Instead, they gave me a reason to fight.